What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college football bowl games preview and picks, and this will be one of our last videos of the year together for college football. As always, I have Ty joining me, our college analyst. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Get us to 500 subscribers, where we will be doing another giveaway. All you have to do to be entered into that is to be subscribed to the channel. But Ty, before we get started into this video's picks, we got to look at so far in the bowl games. We're doing pretty good so far. But out of these 15 games here, which one was probably the best game or one that stood out the most to you?
I mean, there haven't been a ton of really crazy games so far. I would say the Oregon State just blowout of Florida. I mean, obviously it wasn't a good game, but it's significant because it was just an embarrassment for Florida. And I think there's going to be a lot of question marks for them going forward. Obviously, they lose AR now, so we'll see what happens there for next year.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the Troy and UTSA game. It was a very good game. Two 10-win plus teams in non-Power Five conferences lined up with each other, and it really showed that those teams, play competitive, meaningful games, and they are decent teams rather than be a pushover where one was super dominant. So that was good to see. And then we'll look at the other side here where we aren't doing so well yet, but we're making this video as the East Carolina game's going right now. But 1-3 right here. Got the Memphis win as of late. Good thing we decided to make the video after that. But we'll go back to the two games for the next video. And then we'll talk about tomorrow's game, but you'll see this video today on the 28th. So we'll start it off here with UCF in the Military Bowl. I'm going with Duke. I think this team has been criminally underrated this year at 8-4 in the ACC. Everyone pretty much wrote off the ACC when Clemson started to tank for a few weeks there. But this Duke team, it seems like they find themselves going to bowl games consistently now around this 8-4, 7-5. And I like it. I like this Duke program where they're heading. So give me the Blue Devils.
Yeah, I'd say these are two programs definitely heading in the right direction. Little surprised at the line. I would probably take UCF in the points. I like that half. And I think UCF just has more talent across the field, and I think that'll be the difference. I think their offense is going to hold up. They'll give up some points like they usually do, but I think they're going to just outscore Duke.
Then after that game in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, you got Kansas and Arkansas, and Kansas was the biggest story of the year until they lost at home to TCU, and then after that, it was the biggest disappointment of the year. This team was 5-0 at one point, had that big game and lost with game day there. And then, once that game happened, they were 1-6 to close out the year. And that's, obviously not what you want, but it can all be a great year if you win your bowl game, especially for Kansas. It means more than Arkansas. And I think just with that being said, you got to go with Kansas.
Yeah, that's true. It does mean more. I think that's why the spread is so small because I think KJ Jefferson's going to have a field day against that Kansas defense, and I think that'll be the difference. I just don't see Kansas getting enough stops in this game. The only thing that could help Kansas is if Arkansas is just not really motivated. Obviously, they had a pretty rough year for what their standards were, but I still think Arkansas has too much on offense here.
And after that one, you have what should be a blowout in this one, I think. You got Oregon, UNC. On paper, it's a good game, but if you look at talent on the field, Oregon has a lot more. And Bo Nix is obviously the big name in this game. I'm not sure if he's 100% committed on playing, but I thought he was. And if he obviously is playing like we think he is, then they shouldn't really have trouble here with UNC.
I think this will be a shootout, but I think a lot of the points will be from Oregon. That North Carolina defense has been horrible this year. I know they can score, but that defense has been very bad. And Oregon obviously has one of the top offenses in the country. So I think it'll be a big game for Bo Nix. And I think Oregon's going to put up a ton of points in this game and they'll run away with it.
And then at 9, if that one gets ugly early, head over to ESPN and watch this one. Texas Tech, Ole Miss. I think this game will be a closer game. Even in that 3.5, I think this one could go down to a last second game-winning field goal. These two teams match up well with each other. Should be a high-scoring one as well. But I got to go with Ole Miss here just because they're in the better conference. And this team at one point, was one big win away from possibly being a playoff team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ole Miss is going to be able to run the ball very well in this game. Texas Tech, another defense that's not very good. And I think the over under, I would take the under in this game. I think Ole Miss's defense is better than people think, and they'll hold up pretty well in this game. And I think Ole Miss will run away with it late. The way they run the ball, they should be able to control it.
Then moving over to Thursday the 29th, we start it with Syracuse and Minnesota in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl in Yankee Stadium. And I'm going with Minnesota, even though Syracuse pretty much is the home team in this one. The Big Ten, I think, was a very good conference this year. PJ Fleck is a good coach. I mean, he's put up these 8-4 years every year, it seems like, at Minnesota. So he's doing enough to get to bowl games, and that's what Minnesota likes at this point. You know, they're not missing bowl games, not playing how they shouldn't play, but they're not doing anything too spectacular. But if he wins bowl game after bowl game after bowl game every year, then how can you not like the guy? And I think that's going to continue here.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse was a team that I believe they were 6-0 and just completely fell off this season, mainly their offense. They just can't move the ball at all towards the end of the season. I think that'll continue here. It'll be a low scoring game, but Minnesota can still run the ball very well. So I think the Gophers get the win here.
And at 5:30 after that one, in the Cheez-It Bowl, where two players will be sleeping in a Cheez-It bed before this game, you have Oklahoma, Florida State. Just because it's in Florida, I'm going with the Seminoles. You know, they had a promising year at one point, and then they lost to Wake Forest, and then everyone kind of forgot about this team. But at 9-3, with what they had last year and the years before and how they've struggled, it's a good sign to see that this program is on the upward trend. And if they win this bowl game, a 10-win season too, means that this team could mean business next year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Florida State, they have a lot of talent coming back next year. So with that, I think they'll be very motivated for this game, try and build some momentum for next season. Obviously, Oklahoma's had a very disappointing season. So I think Florida State's going to come out ready to play in this game. And sometimes that's the biggest factor. So I'm going to take the Seminoles.
And after that one, in the Alamo Bowl, you have a game that I think a lot of people would have thought both these teams would be around 7-5, 8-4. But Washington really showed out, and in a good way. You know, this team was underrated at the beginning of the year. No one really thought Washington would be this good, and how they turned out. Texas, on the other hand, you know, was just essentially one possession away from 12-0. It felt like at times. And, you know, the Alabama loss, close losses they had to, what was it? I think it's a total of 11 points. Those 4 losses are. So this Texas team has competed in every single game, and they haven't had a bad game yet, in my opinion. Obviously, losses meaning you had a bad game, but Texas is favored. And with me hyping up Texas, I'm still going with Washington. I feel like their magical season continues and they get to 11-2.
Yep, I agree. I think Vegas just loves Texas. It seems like all year they've had some weird spreads and they haven't performed, frankly. I don't know why they're favored in this game either. It's an 8-4 season, another kind of disappointing year. And Washington, they have everything to play for. They won 10 games. They weren't really supposed to do much of anything this year, and they're going for win number 11. So I think Penix has another big game here, and I think Washington wins a shootout.
And moving to the 30th of December, starting at 12, you got Maryland and NC State in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And both of these coaches have agreed to get a mayonnaise bath. And I think that's the big storyline in this one. Not the teams, not who wins. I just want to see another mayonnaise bath at the end of the game. And I think it would be fitting that North Carolina State wins this game because it is played in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I think, you know, they're going to have more fans there. And, you know, these little things do make a factor in these bowl games. And that's why I'm going with NC State.
Yeah, it's not October and it's not September, so Maryland is going to play a little down to where we think they will, because that's just what happens. They usually fall off as soon as November starts, and I think that'll continue here. I think NC State's the better team anyway, so I think they'll get this win, and I think it'll be low scoring. I think NC State's defense will be the difference, so I kind of like the under in this game.
And then at 2 o'clock on CBS, you got Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, Pitt, UCLA, two teams that should be playing each other in a bowl game because both these teams were underrated coming into the year. UCLA didn't really see them having a great year like they did. Obviously losing Kenny Pickett at the beginning of the year, and Slovis coming in and playing pretty well, getting this team to 8-4, but he's in the portal. And because he's the quarterback, the guy that matters the most to the team, I got to go with DTR and the Bruins.
Yeah, Pitt can run the ball very well. I think they still will have some success with that, but you said a DTR for UCLA. I think that offense is still much better than that for Pitt. I think I like the over in this one because UCLA's defense, as we saw against USC, they can give up a lot of points, but I still think they're going to outscore Pitt in this game.
Then at 3:30, I'm wearing the Notre Dame sweatshirt, so it's only fitting that I got to go with Notre Dame here in a very good matchup. These two teams, well, Notre Dame, had a rough start to the year, obviously. High anticipation, Marcus Freeman's first year, blah, blah, blah. They struggle. Then they rally off a lot of wins late to get themselves into a decent bowl game and play an SEC team. And I think if Marcus Freeman gets this win, which I think he will, that's going to be a success in his first year as a head coach. And obviously, with the news today, Sam Hartman is entering the portal, and pretty much it's almost like 100% confirmed that he's going to go to Notre Dame. Is a big get for him, and that's something to build on next year, especially if this team wins this bowl game.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame still has a lot of talent. They were ranked in the top 5 for a reason to start the season. And now everyone's really started to buy into Coach Marcus Freeman. I think they started 1-3 this year. So since then, they've just been a completely different team. In South Carolina, I mean, they played in another world against Tennessee, obviously, and then followed that up with another huge win over Clemson. But I think they finally come back to earth. There's been so much time off now. So I think Notre Dame proves that they're the better team and wins the game.
Then at 4:30 on Barstool Network, yes, Barstool Network. I'm sure it's going to be on like YouTube and Twitter and whatnot. You got the Arizona Bowl, two teams that's they're just two teams. It feels like compared to all these other big teams we're starting to talk about now. You got Ohio, they lost in the Big Ten or in the MAC championship. Then you got Wyoming, a team that produced Josh Allen, and that's pretty much all I know about Wyoming this year. So I got to go with the Bobcats.
Yeah, Wyoming's just they're in the middle of the Mountain West, which was not a very good conference this year. Not that the MAC was great, but I think Ohio is still a pretty strong mid-major team. So I think they get the win. That's about all I know about this game.
Then at 8 o'clock, you have the first of 6 New Year's Bowl games. You got Tennessee, Clemson, and for me, I would 100% have picked Tennessee. Obviously, you know who was playing, and now Hyatt's out, and Clemson, Ugalele, he's in the portal, which I think is a good sign for the team. I think the team played better under their new quarterback, and Will Shipley played good, and they still have a lot to play for. A 12-win season is just ho-hum, just another day for this Clemson program at this point for Dabo. And I think they're going to do that this year and get a big win against an SEC school.
Yeah, I like Clemson in the points here. This is one of my locks. I mean, we've all seen Joe Milton play. It's not like he's a wild card here. We know what he brings to the table. He can only pretty much throw the ball deep, and now with Jalen Hyatt out, his deep threat is not there. So I like Clemson. I think their defense is going to have a big day. So if you're looking for a parlay here, go Clemson in the points and the over or the under.
And then moving to New Year's Eve, we're going to start out another New Year's Six game with Alabama and Kansas State. And yes, you're looking at that right. I am going with Kansas State. I think that this team, they got the best of USC, or sorry, not USC. They got the best of TCU, the championship, and they're riding that cloud 9 momentum right now into the Sugar Bowl. If they can beat an undefeated team, why can't they beat a 10-2 Alabama team, even with their best players playing this one? I know Bryce Young is playing, and he is a huge difference maker on the offensive side of the ball. Their wide receivers this year haven't been, what we've seen from Bama has produced in the last few years. Obviously, Gibbs, he's a good running back too, but Will Howard and Adrian Martinez, I would assume Will Howard is leading this offense, just because Martinez is still banged up. But if that's the case, then I still got to go with Kansas State. This team, it just seems like they're on a crash course to have a good win and get a bowl win as well.
I think I would have maybe went Kansas State with this one, but I think that Bryce Young and Will Anderson both playing, I think that shows that Alabama is very motivated for this game. We've seen in the past they fall into when it was the BCS, they would fall into a just regular BCS bowl and they just completely lay an egg because that's not where they wanted to be. And you might get a little bit of that in this game, but I still think Alabama has too much talent and they are still motivated to get this win. So I think Alabama will get out. They'll go out there and get this win.
And also at 12, if you like ugly defensive games, this is definitely going to be your game. Iowa, obviously, we saw them awful this year. They played in what, a 6-5 game at one point, first game of the year. And that's all you need to know about these Hawkeyes. And I can't pick a team that wins a 6-5 game ever. And I got to go with Kentucky here in the Music City Bowl.
Well, I'm going Iowa because this might be a 6-5 game, and it's going to be played exactly how Iowa wants the game to be played, which is ugly, lots of punting, lots of turnovers, and this Iowa defense, they just completely feast off of turnovers. They force a ton of them. Now you get a backup quarterback for Kentucky. For Iowa, it's like their third or fourth string quarterback, but it doesn't matter because they're all as good as each other, which is terrible. So that's not really going to matter for them. So I think Iowa wins. I'll say 13 to.
And then at 4, we got the biggest game as a Michigan fan, 13-0 Michigan, 12-1 TCU in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. And obviously, we got to go with our bias pick here, the homer pick and the Wolverines. And their storyline, Donovan Edwards, obviously Corum, he's done for the year. He got his hand surgery. So now he has 2 hands, actually, to play football. And that's just another weapon unlocked in the passing game for J.J. McCarthy. We saw him absolutely light it up against Ohio State. Even in the Big Ten game a little bit, they just started airing it out. And I think that is going to be telling here against TCU, which defense has been good at times, but they still play in the Big 12. And everyone knows that the Big 12 loves to put up points, where Michigan's defense, they love to not let you score. And I think that's going to turn out to be a second half thing where we know Michigan, obviously been watching them every game, they are a second half team and really make good adjustments. And I think that's where Michigan gets them.
Yeah, I agree. Sonny Dykes for TCU, he said they just want to stop the run, make JJ McCarthy beat them. But that's not as easy, I think, as he's making it out to be. Michigan has the best O line in the country, so you basically have to stack the box with 8 guys if you really want to stop the run for Michigan. And if you do that, you're obviously going to be susceptible to some big plays like we saw with Ohio State. So it's not black and white where it's just, well, you stop the run, you're going to beat them. Otherwise, Michigan wouldn't be 13-0. So I think that could run TCU into some trouble if they're not going to be balanced on defense. And I think Michigan could definitely put up a lot of points on them. So I like this game to be in like the 34-24 range, something along those lines. But I think Michigan wins this. Might be a little uncomfortable at times, but they'll pull away late.
And then at 8, we have the second biggest game of the day, Ohio State. And Ohio State obviously gets their second chance here, their extra lifeline, getting into the playoff after the loss at home against Michigan. And now, what do you get rewarded with? The number 1 team in the country, Georgia. On paper, this is a better matchup than I think the media is making it. No one's really giving Ohio State a chance here. All the, reporters, this and that, media, Georgia, easy win because it's a home game in Atlanta, blah, blah, blah. But you still got to give Ohio State credit. Georgia has been susceptible of an upset. So close with that Missouri game. And if they can honestly just stay to a script like that, then who knows? Maybe Ohio State will win this game. I think it will be closer than a lot of people think. A lot of people are taking Georgia in the spread. I don't know if that's the safe bet here. I like Ohio State to be around that 7-6 range for sure, and maybe even upset them. But at the end of the day, I got to go with Georgia. You can't bet against a 13-0 team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ohio State, they're pretty confident in their offense. I've seen a lot of their fans saying, well, Georgia's never faced an offense like us. Well, Georgia did play Tennessee when they were fully healthy, who might have been a better offense than Ohio State. And people forget that Georgia just completely dominated that game. Tennessee had 6 points until like the last 2 minutes. So Georgia has faced great offenses and they have dominated them. So I'm not saying that's what they're going to do in this game, but I don't see Ohio State just completely lighting them up. And that's what they're going to have to do if they're going to win. So I'm going Georgia. I think they will cover, and I think it'll hit the under in this game.
And then moving over to the day after New Year's because of NFL playing on Sunday, we got Mississippi State, Illinois in the RealQuest Bowl. And I'm going to go with Mississippi State here in this one. This was the only line that changed from one team to another in this video here. And with that being said, obviously Vegas is starting to like Mississippi State. We both had Mississippi State before that line changed. And, with Chase Brown obviously going to go to the draft, Is he playing this game? I'm not 100% sure if he is or not, and he's a big factor. But Will Rogers in Mississippi State, and you also got to bring up Mike Leach's passing. They have a lot to play for here in this one. And, obviously heavy hearts are going to be for this one. I'm sure that this game is for Mike Leach, and I got to go with Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think that does make a difference here, playing for Mike Leach. Rest in peace, obviously. And I think Illinois, their defense has been really good, but it's been mostly against the run. They've been really good stopping the run, but obviously this Mike Leach offense, they don't really run the ball at all. So that's not really going to phase Mississippi State if that's what's happening, because they just pretty much throw it on every down. So I think it's a bad matchup here for Illinois. I think Mississippi State, especially with what they have to play for, they'll get this win.
At 1 in the Cotton Bowl, you got the best non-Power 5 school, Tulane, the Green Wave at 11-2, matching up against a USC team with 2 losses to Utah. And as much as I want to take Tulane, everyone is playing except Jordan Addison for USC, and Caleb Williams is still there, the Heisman winner. I gotta go with USC, the Trojans. But if they, didn't have Caleb Williams playing, then I'd probably go with the Green Wave.
Yeah, I mean, there is a path here for Tulane. We saw USC, how they just basically didn't want to tackle against Utah. And Tulane's a running team. So, if they can run the ball pretty well and USC continues to miss tackles, then maybe they can pull the upset. But USC has Caleb Williams, and that's pretty much all you need to know. So I'm going USC here. They'll just put up too many points for Tulane at the end of the day.
And then at 1, you have LSU, Purdue, and the spread has went up 14.5. And you said it, O'Connell's not playing, and that's all that matters in this one because LSU has had a very good season. Under first year head coach at LSU, Brian Kelly, I think it's a successful season for sure, especially because these guys are not his players. And getting them not only to a 9-win season, but to an SEC championship in his first year proves that he is going to stick around in the SEC. And give him year 2, year 3, and finally year 4, I think is going to be the year where this team really could take off and get to maybe the Ed Orgeron, Joe Burrow days where they, obviously won the Natty. Obviously, that's a few years down the road here, but getting a 10-win season and a bowl win in a big game too for LSU is huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think LSU is just going to blow out Purdue here. No Aiden O'Connell, and maybe even more importantly, no Charlie Jones for Purdue. That was pretty much their whole offense. We saw that against Michigan. Charlie Jones, I think, had somewhere between 10 and 15 catches, 100 yards. So he's their go-to guy, and they don't have him. So they're going to have to basically be a running team, and that's not at all their identity. So I think LSU is just going to put their foot down and dominate this game and get to 10 wins.
And then at 5, the last game of the video here, Penn State, Utah. And if you guys have been with us since the beginning of the year, you know my love for Penn State is at an all-time high because their 2 losses are to both of the Big Ten teams in the playoff. I had them at 5, in our rankings before all these bowl games. And if they win this game, then what's not to say that they still belong there at 5? Sean Clifford has had a great year. Obviously, James Franklin, another 10-win season for him. And how rewarding would it be for this Penn State team to get a Rose Bowl win in a big win against a Utah team that has came on as of late too. So I got to like the Nittany Lions here.
I think there's just something about this Utah team this year. Winning big games at the last second is what they've done a couple times. And then obviously they just blew out USC in that Pac-12 championship. They do have 3 losses, but they're playing like one of the best 4 teams in the country to end the season. I think that'll continue here. Obviously, they had a heartbreaking loss last year in the Rose Bowl, a game they led pretty much the whole game. So with that on their minds, I think they'll have on their minds this year trying to get that Rose Bowl win, and I think they'll get it. Penn State's a really good team, but Utah is just on a mission right now, it seems like.
And that's going to be it for our video this week. Make sure you guys come back in a few weeks to check out how we did on our picks this week and when we do the national championship where we do a deep dive into that as well. Subscribe to our channel as well. Be entered into our 500 subscriber giveaway. But until the next video, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.